This is the part where Robin takes the silliest thing I say and uses it as a cold open.
The silliest or most incriminating? I don't know.
Both.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I was just telling Ben I made like the mistake of reading the latest executive order
Oh,
right before
God.
signing on.
Yeah, so did I.
So I like had my very quick trauma spiral a minute ago.
Yeah.
And now I'm like regaining myself. But
Yeah, no, I just got out of therapy and I spent all of therapy talking about that. So
I had therapy today too.
Hey.
Nice. So everybody's ready.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully someday when you have your cat, your
I'll
toddler
come
is
back
going to
on the
be so
show
happy.
and yeah, I'll come back on the show and introduce the cat to y'all.
We add to the cat family tree because one of our very
family
first
of
guests,
podcasts.
their name is Ari and they're one of my best friends. Their philosophy is all cats are cousins and all cats are gay.
All cats are cousins and all cats are gay. Oh, so okay, so I have a really funny queer cat story.
Yes.
My friend's friend worked as the front desk clerk at a veterinarian's office. These people called up and they were like, we have a new cat. You know, we want to bring the cat in to the vet. My friend's friend was like, great. What's your pet's name? And gets the cat's name. What's your name? What's the cat's sex? And the people are like, oh, it's a female cat. And they're like, okay. And they check off all the stuff. And then they come in with the cat. And the vet takes one look at the cat and is like, I hate to tell you this, but your cat is not female. And the person was like, yes, she is. She's a girl cat. And they're like, no, your cat is not female. And she's like, my cat is trans.
Good for that cat. Trans rights for all.
So it was just like very like, I'm glad you decided that for your cat.
Right.
I mean, whenever someone is like, is this cat a boy or a girl? I'm like, my cat doesn't care.
Cats don't. Yeah.
Like, technically, like, Stormy
Gender
is a
doesn't
boy,
exist
but
for
if you call him a girl, if you have chicken, he'll let you call him
Yeah.
a terrorist to
Right.
society.
I mean, the vet like explained that like for the purposes of the veterinarian's office, they needed to know the sex of the animal because it was something that they were going to have to do different medical care for. But it was very very entertaining.
Cats are gay, so why can't they be trans?
Yeah,
I
cats
think
can be trans.
cats can be anything.
All right. Well, how are we feeling about getting into things?
I'm good.
I'm so ready. I'm excited. Yay.
All right. Well, in that case, hey, brats, my name is Robin and I'm trans.
My name is Ben and I'm trans.
And you are listening to Ben and Robin Are Trans, the Brat Pod. We have a special guest with us today, as all of our guests are special. So this is actually the first time I've had to write down like a resume essentially for the introduction because like I follow our guest is Tea, by the way. I follow them on Bluesky and just like I'm constantly seeing posts and everything that are like, wow, there's a lot more going on with this person than I thought. The first kind of thing that I heard about T was that she was the editorial director for comics at King Features. Specifically, I heard about her in relation to the Popeye comic, which like just went into the public domain recently. We will definitely get into that later in the podcast. Some other things that they do are journalism about comics and fandom stuff. They've given talks, they've done like Comic Con type panels, inclusive language consulting, and cocktail consulting. And then, like, I just directly sent this one to Ben the other day. Like, he just posted the other day, I spent 3 years running a 200-person freeform play-by-post online RPG. It's like, Ben, I'm like so ready for this interview. So, hey T, nice to meet you
Hi.
in person.
Nice to meet you in person. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Did I cover enough of your resume?
I think you covered plenty.
Mhm.
I've done a lot of weird stuff.
Which is
Yeah.
exactly how you should
Really.
live your life. Do as many weird things as
Mhm.
you can.
Mhm.
Yeah, I very much believe in doing the most fun thing possible in any given moment.
I love that.
It's amazing.
So the first thing we like to ask our guests is just in your own words, how would you describe your gender to people?
So I describe my gender as agender. I don't really have an internal gender identity. I use the word genderqueer a lot. I sometimes use non-binary because it's what most people are familiar with, but I also feel like the term non-binary sort of creates another binary. Um
Mhm.
which sort of defeats the purpose. So
Yep.
I definitely prefer genderqueer. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Like I just don't really vibe with gender.
Mhm.
Fair.
Yeah, and, like, even though we have the word trans in the show name, like, we have plenty of friends who are also agender or, like, gender queer, general gender fuckery. They like, there's a lot of people who don't use the word, trans, but we're kind of, like, all family in one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely feel that way.
Yeah, and I will say, like, your online presence, there's a lot of extremely, like, trans supportive posts and everything, and I was like, trans or not, like, however you wanna describe yourself, I super appreciate that.
Absolutely. I just feel like everybody should get to be who they are. And my husband is transgender.
Mhm,
So what impacts trans people impacts my family. The
absolutely.
person I love most in the world is trans. And I think we're all siblings in gender queerness,
Mhm,
and we gotta be there for each other.
I agree.
absolutely.
You don't have to be one of us by title to come to my potluck, you know?
Exactly.
You could still be one of us without being, like, in that box.
Mhm. Yeah, and this was, like, probably a lot of episodes ago at this point, but we were having a conversation with our friend Ari, like, pretty soon after the election, and one thing that they were talking about that has just, like, stuck in my head ever since is just, like, the idea of a broader, queer solidarity because, like, any individual group, like, in the LGBTQIA+ umbrella is, like, such a small percentage of the population, but together we're like a whole army. And so, like, we're very much in favor of just bring everybody in. We're even friends with a couple like cis people, straight people, you know.
I
Yeah.
mean,
But like we all gotta support each other.
we're both married to cis people. They're
Mhm.
still pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, does anybody have a moment of queer joy that they want to share today?
Yeah, so I can tell you right now, that my toddler, my 2-year-old, just told us that when they grow up, they want to be an octopus.
I have one tattooed on me, so I am now your toddler's cousin because 'cause I'm
Amazing.
part octopus. I love that.
That's so cool. We love octopuses in this house. We are very, very into our cephalopod friends, and yeah, we're very much of the like we don't eat octopuses because they're as smart as we are.
The
Uh,
fact that you use
Mhm.
octopuses makes my heart sing because that is correct scientifically. Literally, you can use octopi if you want, but scientifically, it's octopuses
octopuses. Oh yes,
Mhm.
or octopodes if you want to be real
octopodes is
old
good
school.
too. Octopus
Yeah.
is a good word.
Oh, I love you.
Yeah,
Did we just become like best friends?
definitely.
This is amazing. I studied crabs in grad school, but I really wanted to study cephalopods. But Brown never contacted me after I sent an inquiry, so I went with the crabs.
Mm.
Crabs are cool too.
They're
Crabs
really
are very
cool.
cool. They're very
Crabs are cool.
curious.
Robin, do you have one today?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't have one today. Not that I don't have one, but I just like
Brain no worky.
I well, I was telling you both like before we started recording, like I just made the mistake of reading the news directly like before going to the podcast, and it just like deleted everything good from my brain. And so like I am happy to be able to talk to some lovely queer friends now because that is like bringing all the joy back into me,
I
which
have one.
that's my joy, by the way.
Um, yeah, talking to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're cool. So I did a sleep study recently, and at the intake appointment, the doctor was very like trans ignorant, and I did not like him at all. But then I finally got a copy of the sleep study in my online portal, and the first page says like Ben is an adult male, and that's
Yeah.
the first time that's ever happened. And
Amazing.
that was really exciting.
Oh, that's great.
It's amazing how little affirmation we need to.
Yeah, it's just
Just
page
like
when Ben
girls,
is an adult male,
you
like,
are an
seeking to
adult male.
determine sleep apnea, which I
Mhm.
didn't have, which is kind of annoying because that means I don't have an answer yet, but I'm an adult male, and the doctor, I don't I hope it was this doctor who did it, and maybe he learned from my message after, because after the fact, I sent him a message like, "By the way, you need to learn some things." And he sent me a really bad non-apology, but maybe he did learn something, and that would make me happy.
It was a pretty bad apology.
That would be good. That would be
Mhm.
nice if, like, your message changed this person's viewpoint.
He basically went, "Were you born a woman?" Which no one is born a woman. You are born a baby. A woman is an
Very
adult.
disconcerting.
But also I had to explain what like assigned female at birth is.
Yeah.
So that was my message was
Should tell him you were born a man. It's like a Benjamin Button situation.
exactly. When I was born, I
Born
was
an
8 feet tall.
elderly
I've just been
man.
shrinking.
Mhm.
But yeah, was not born a woman for the record. No one is. If they were, there would be scientific papers about it because that would be wild.
And probably very painful for the person giving birth.
Right? Like, it's like a kiwi where 40% of their body is the egg developing
Oh,
inside, but worse.
yeah.
But anyway, adult male. Hee hee.
Yes. That's great.
Why don't we start off with, and forgive me, I keep turning this into like a job interview a tiny bit, but why don't we start off with your last career position? So you were just working for King Features until very recently. What were you doing there to begin with?
Yeah, so I worked at King Features for about 16 years. I
Mhm.
started as an associate editor, basically doing stuff like reading the slush pile for submissions and kind of worked my way up to doing creative editorial on a couple comics.
Mhm.
But also did a lot of things like building websites for comics and managing an online comics community, did some social media management, very jack of all trades kind of position. And then in 2018, there was some management restructuring. And after that, I became the editorial director, which basically meant that I oversaw the editorial team and did a lot of different things like advising on movie pitches or TV pitches for comics. Still did some website development work, did a lot of just sort of outreach to cartoonists. It was my job to find cartoonists and hire them to write and draw comics for us. So lots and lots and lots of different things. Basically, I got paid to be a big nerd, which is the coolest thing in the world.
That's the
So
dream.
I got to read comics and talk about comics and look at comics and help people make their comics better. And it was a pretty great job. So I really loved every minute of it.
We have a friend to introduce you to, who loves comics and writes them, but doesn't have an illustrator. Maybe if you two met, you could work together to figure out how to find an illustrator.
Although I did just tell her I was going to start beef between the two of you just for like social media presence because they are actually writing a character called Rainbow Boy who is based on a public domain comic book character.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Mhm.
She's a public domain nerd, according to her girlfriend. Apparently, they met via the public domain obsession, which I don't have the story, but I need to learn that soon.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Public domain stuff is great. I mean, I think one of the things that is so important right now is people understanding, the value of public domain text and imagery, and, people who are interested in using AI could be doing all of that with free public domain materials, and not stealing from artists who are trying to make a living.
That's exactly where my brain went as soon as you said text and imagery. I was like, "Oh, that'd be so good for AI so they could stop screwing people
Mhm.
over."
Mhm.
Yeah. We have a
Uh,
lot of friends who are artists and in different artistic fields, and this is a conversation that comes up a lot.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of queer people who are drawn to making art partly because there isn't enough art that centers queer people. So, I think there's a lot of people who look at the media landscape and don't see their story being told, and it really inspires a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
that's why we have this podcast.
Hey.
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily call it art. It's more of a conversation and an excuse to meet cool people. But it was wanting to see more diverse queer voices that are just normal people.
I
Yeah.
think that's awesome. I really do.
Mhm.
I was telling my husband before I came on here, he was asking me a little bit about the podcast, and I was like, "Yeah." I was like, the host told me that this is really a way to make friends, and my husband was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, that's so cool."
And if he
So,
ever wants to come on, just let us know.
I can definitely extend the invitation to him.
Mhm. Is he a comic artist or
No,
writer?
he was a comic editor for many years. He now works as an anti-carceral advocate. Um,
Oh, we
and,
need to talk
Get
to
him on here.
yeah, no, my husband is the coolest person on earth. Um, but he also does the podcast Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men, which is like 10 years old now. I think almost 11 years old. And he and his podcast partner slash best friend talk about the X-Men for an hour every week. And he's written a couple Marvel comic he's written a few comics in general, but he wrote a Cyclops one shot for Marvel, and he
Mhm.
wrote a Captain America story. Those are, I think, the things he's done most recently, but the Cyclops one shot is really great. Really, really great. Definitely. It's called Marvel's X-Men Snapshots Fantastic Four, I think. It's weird because it's technically about Cyclops experiencing watching the Fantastic Four. So I don't remember the exact title, but it's the X-Men Snapshots with Cyclops. His name is Jay Edidin, and yeah, his stuff is great.
Oh,
And he does
I
really
love him.
important work.
In case he needs more motivation to come on the podcast, Stormy's littermate that we also have is named Rogue,
Ooh, so you have Storm
and
and Rogue.
Stormy's shelter name was actually Wolverine, but
Oh.
we felt like he was more of a Stormy, even though he's a boy. We can be gender.
There is somebody who does a great gender swapped Storm cosplay. Did one for FlameCon a few years back. I've also seen gender swapped Rogue, which is also awesome. But there are definitely male Rogue cosplayers out there doing awesome work. So,
I love cosplayers.
oh
They're
yeah,
Amazing.
peak creativity.
cosplay is phenomenal. I love it.
When I was a kid, I didn't do like a lot of comics, but I was obsessed with the X-Men. I've talked about this multiple times in the podcast before, I think, but I think the thing that really drew me to the X-Men was just how every character has some really hyper specific ability that is a lot of times either useless by itself or like something that could be actively harmful to themselves or others, and like a whole like spectrum of that. But, like, the whole ethos of it is, like, they're coming together, they're making something good out of their, like, beautiful rainbow of like powers and all of the pros and cons involved there. And through like community, they're doing something great. And then like I turned out to be queer and everything. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there is a really big queer following of X-Men fans.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of, particularly like in Claremont's run, there's a lot of queer subtext that some of it in the past few years has fortunately finally become text. But there's a lot of it that certainly at the time it was being written, it's very obviously there to anybody who knows what to look for and is looking for a queer story, and I think there's a lot of people who gravitated to it because of that.
Mhm.
So there's a ton of like
Yeah.
FlameCon, which is the biggest and longest running queer comic convention in the world in New York. I've worked as a volunteer for FlameCon for many years. I just took a few years off because I had a kid. But there's usually a lot of really great X-Men programming at FlameCon just because there is such an appetite for it among queer comics nerds.
I did not even know that exists.
Oh, yeah. It's
That's
in New
so
York
cool.
City
And I love
in
the name.
August. Yes.
FlameCon is fantastic
Yeah.
because I am flaming.
It is a really wonderful, inclusive environment. One of the things I love about FlameCon is that it is really inclusive of people with disabilities, with all types of bodies, with all types of genders. It's inclusive of families. They do a youth day, which is one of those things that I think a lot of queer programming is by nature very adult only because it's very focused on sex, which makes sense for a lot of queer programming. But FlameCon does a lot of stuff that is very kid friendly, with a good dose of stuff that's for grown-ups. It's a really amazing space to be in. It's just like one of the coolest communities that comes together once a year and just like has this whole nerdy, geeky celebration of whatever people love.
I'm gonna have to look into that. I need more things that I do once a year because right now I
Mhm.
only have one once a year thing, and it takes so long to get to that thing.
Yeah.
Takes a whole year to get to it every time.
Mhm.
I need more. That way it's every month maybe, or every 2 months.
Ah, yeah. It's nice to have really like affirming geek spaces because they're really a hit or miss.
Yeah.
Um, any kind of like geek or fandom or TTRPG or like anything like that. It's like such a mix between the most beautiful, like safest people in the world and not that.
Yeah, well, and I think too, there's also, a lot of queer spaces can be very hit or miss. Like there's a lot of purportedly LGBTQIA. Oh, we've got a toddler.
The toddler.
Hey.
Hello, toddler. I hope you're having a great day.
I've never done an ad before. I guess it's not really an ad, it's just kind of us talking about our shit.
It's a public service announcement. This is your brain. This is your brain on trans. And it is
Paging
an A.
Dr. Brat. Emergency, emergency.
Do you know where your kids are?
Neither do I. Stop asking.
Hey brats, we made a new website with our friend Valentine Valcourt from Valentine's Voice called transhopeunited.com.
transhopeunited.com.
It has cool podcasts you can follow, and then it also has a directory.
We're just kind of trying to provide a space where we can help each other out because trans creators we're mostly poor. We're not getting ad revenue or anything, and so it's a way to kind of help boost each other.
It's not going to be like us putting any of our content behind a paywall.
Mhm.
It's going to be ways that people who have the means to help us out, and we'll try to give you little goodies that aren't
Mhm.
necessarily content, but like maybe I'll send you a crocheted thing.
Stickers, yeah. But also, if you go to directory.transhopeunited.com, we have started doing a whole directory that's resources for trans people. We make a lot of connections with people who have connections to other people and resources, from like national level resources to really micro level. You can search for it, you can look through tags and categories, and most importantly, you can go on and submit your own entries too.
Mhm.
So we're able to like actually as a community community help get these resources out there for each other.
Yeah, and there's still more that we want to add, but it'd be rough out here, so we're doing our best.
Yeah.
But people should come be our comrades.
Thank you, brats.
Also, just because we're recording Trans Moment of Joy, we had our first community marriage, and I'm really, really so excited about it. Happy marriage to Sarah and Maddie.
And finally, if anyone out there is planning on getting married, like, we will get ordained.
Yeah, if we can't in time, I know a guy who looks like a lumberjack who is already ordained with that online one. Have Paul Bunyan officiate your wedding today. Oh my God. I love babies. Ah, I'm child free, but like every time I'm looking at a baby, it's like, but what if?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also like one of those things that's very kind of ingrained in queer culture. Like, there is a lot of need for fun uncles, you know?
Oh, and I am that for sure for so many people.
Like you don't have to have kids to love kids, and
There's a lot of need for that too.
Yeah. Oh, this is Jay.
I'm sorry.
You can interrupt. You can interrupt.
Interrupt away.
Yeah.
We're here to meet friends. The more the merrier.
Yeah.
We really need this right now too. So
I'm like crying because
right
kids
now.
are so great.
Yeah.
I feel like my husband and we could have a very cute kid, but I would rather. I've got a lot of people, including two autistic adults who I might end up as guardians of when their parents get too old to help care for them. So it's like I've got my kids. They're already adults, but they're my kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also like, you know, another foundational queer, you know, experiences is very much having a found family. And, you know, finding your family among people who you're not biologically related to.
Do you want to hang on to them or Julie?
I would love for you to take them.
All right. Here you go.
Kid voices make me cry. They're just so cute. I used to be a live-in nanny, and I miss those. I miss those cuddles.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool.
I was like a third parent that did most of the parenting.
Yeah.
It was an experience. It taught me a lot.
Oh, cool. That's very cool. Yeah, I have a couple friends who did full-time nannying, and they just, you know, they know so much about kids, like that, you know, especially for people who don't have kids of their own. It's great to have like adults who don't have kids of their own who just like can tell you so many things that you wouldn't as a parent, like as a first-time parent, that I would not have thought of, you know, that they're just like fonts of knowledge, and I'm so happy to have them in my life.
Or just someone, if they're nearby, that you know is comfortable caring for a kid. If you ever need a break and you know that it's not going to take away from their kids because there aren't kids.
Yeah.
And they probably want to because they love kids. They just don't want their own.
Right. Yeah.
Queer community is magnificent.
Yes. 100%. Love it.
I'm trying not to cry right now.
Oh, your family unit is like the future that the liberals want, and I am a liberal, and it is the future I want, and it is. I am also very emotional right now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think we're really incredibly lucky. You know, incredibly privileged. I had a job that helped supported fertility medicine. You know, we had enough money to do IVF. We actually found a place that does IVF significantly more cheaply than most clinics, which definitely helped us be able to afford it, but it was still very expensive, you know, and I know that that's not something that everybody has access to. We ended up going to a fertility clinic called New Hope Fertility in New York City, and the doctors there were amazing. Everybody who we worked with there was amazing, and just I had had a really bad experience at a previous fertility clinic, and the people at New Hope really just like restored my faith in the entire process. And we ended up with an amazing little kid, you know, and we're just so grateful to have them in our life. You know, I didn't necessarily know whether I wanted to have a partner, but I knew I wanted to have a kid. And I'm really amazingly grateful to Jay that I have a partner who was willing to take that journey with me. And yeah, we were super lucky.
That's amazing. And I love when people who want kids have kids, because like there's so many people who just have kids because oops. And like the kids know, the kids can feel it, But when a kid's actually wanted and loved, that's gonna be a healthy, happy baby
Yeah.
and adult someday.
We sure hope so. We want them to, I think like my biggest wish right now is that my kid can grow up safe and happy and loved.
Well, if you ever need any support, I'm far away from you, but,
You're not that far.
it's a day trip.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
3
done it
hours
as a
on the
day trip.
train. It's 3 hours
Yeah.
on the train. It's easy. We're gonna call you up for babysitting now.
I would love to. It's just a matter of, making sure I don't already have babysitting. That's my year-round job is taking care of those autistic young adults that are my brothers/future sons. Sometimes they accidentally call me dad, and it makes me laugh.
Oh, that's really
Mm.
cute. That's really awesome.
'Cause they're younger. They're significantly younger than me. I'm in my 30s, and they're early 20s.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so, like, they're my brothers, but they're my if they call me dad, then I get to call them my adult son, you know?
Yes. My adult son. I have, a younger friend who Jay calls my large adult son,
Mhm.
um, and, it's very funny. It's
Oh,
always
yeah, they're each at least a
good.
foot taller than me. They are large.
Oh, yeah.
I love them so much.
Oh, that's great.
I think that one thing like that a lot of cishet people are missing out on is the like found family that we get to have. Um, Positive spin on it. Like
Yeah.
it'd be nice to have like a idealistic, like healthy bio family, but the families that we build are just like so beautiful. And I think that the world would be a better place if everybody were able to have that.
I think you're so right. It's something that, I think that there's some cishet people who have those kinds of relationships, but by and large, it's definitely like it's foundationally queer, and it's
Yeah.
really amazing to have that kind of family.
I love babies.
This is not our normal target demographic, but we're always happy when a new fan.
Yeah, no, this is fun. I appreciate your patience with
Oh,
the
please.
interruptions, as it were.
I I have no maximum on the number of nibblings I can handle in my life, so
Mm,
I'm totally comfortable with this.
Good,
The more the merrier.
good.
As previously discussed, we're as much in this to make friends for
Yeah.
ourselves as we are anything else. Doing the podcast has been just like extremely nourishing for both of us, I think.
I just think
Um,
it's so great. Like, I think, just doing something like that to like reach out and connect with people and get to know people is so cool. And,
mhm.
I think like it kind of makes me want to do it just to like make more friends.
And
Yeah,
and even if it's not making friends, it'll show just random people who find us the breadth of, gender expression and, like,
yeah.
self-acceptance and self-love and community. Like, there's so many opportunities and so many options.
Well, and like queer and trans experience too. I think like that's one of those things, especially when you talk to like really young queer and trans kids. Like a lot of the time, they don't really know how to picture a future for themselves. I feel like this would be such a great resource for a kid who is like, oh my gosh, there are grown-ups who have cool lives, who are doing all kinds of different things, and some of them have kids and some of them don't, and some of them have boring jobs and some of them have interesting jobs, and some of them have cool hobbies. And getting a sense of like just the idea of queer and trans people as like normal happy adults is,
Yep,
I think,
we're just people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're not just people.
No, we're
Queer
better.
people queer
Well,
people are incredible people most of the
I mean,
time.
we're superhuman people. Yeah.
I feel like such an incredible boost of serotonin from seeing a happy queer family. Thank you so much
Mhm.
for that. Like,
Yeah.
it's been a rough week. It's been a rough month.
It has been a rough, yeah, it's been a rough couple months, and yeah, I no, I love my family.
I love your family.
Aw.
Robin's in my family.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do we have what else do we want to talk about before I cry again?
No, I was gonna say come up with something because I'm trying hard not to like go straight into family trauma. We have plenty of episodes for that kind of content, but
Um,
it's just
it's
yeah,
hard to think because life is hard and families are beautiful sometimes, and I like that beautiful families exist because it's just really nice to see that. Um,
Yeah, I'm in a Discord that is a lot of queer and trans families and parents of queer and trans kids. And it's been just such an affirming space to like be in a place where I can talk to other parents whose families don't necessarily like look like the families you see on TV, and
Mhm.
just like we all, have the same sorts of like anxieties and, we talk about like babies pooping and stuff that like, but doing it with families who look like our families makes such a big difference.
and who you know are safe.
Mhm. God, that's gonna be really, I imagine, a lifeline, as we deal with the long-term repercussions of current events. Having other people in your same boat is gonna be amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
'Cause people keep saying, "Oh, it's gonna be a hard 4 years." It's not just gonna be 4 years.
No, because whatever happens for the next 4 years is going to, like you said, the repercussions are gonna last a lot longer than 4 years.
There's
There's gonna be a
precedents that are gonna
lot.
be set, laws passed.
Yeah, and there's gonna be a lot of horrible stuff that's gonna have to be undone before any new foundations can be built.
But we'll be working hard at it.
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember the long resume. Do I remember something about, like, you teaching or, like, giving seminars?
I do speaking engagements and I've done a bunch of comics workshops for kids where, we teach kids about just like the basics of comics and then do activities with the kids to like learn how to cartoon and then do activities where they draw their own comics, which is super fun. And one of the things that I think is so important, particularly for kids, but really for anybody to understand, is that like cartooning is a different skill set than being an excellent drafts person. And like you don't have to be able to draw like a super realistic horse to be a good cartoonist. You don't have to be able to draw things that look real. You have to be able to draw things that are expressive. And that can be drawing very simply in a lot of cases. So cartooning is a lot more accessible to a lot more people than some other art forms are. And kind of learning the building blocks of cartooning can open up like a lot of avenues for self expression for people who are maybe intimidated by other art forms.
That's so cool.
There's so many queer people, including a lot of our friends, who have found themselves through like queer webcomics
Mhm.
and like all kinds of like comic related things. Like there's so much like especially in indie realms that people are able to like connect with in that way can be like incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I and there's there are a lot of queer and trans webcomic creators and there are a bunch of really long-term webcomic creators who've been doing it for, 20 years at this point, who came out as trans during their webcomic creation. And so, like, their transition is sort of publicly visible through like commentary on their comics, which is always really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of people who sort of did a lot of kind of self-exploration through comics, through either autobio or, fictional comics, just sort of like using the comic format to figure out like who they were and what their place in the world was.
It's gotta be so cool for the artist slash author. I don't know if it's, like, always both. Probably sometimes people are collaborating. But, like, to go back through the history of it and, like, we always talk, on a regular basis in this podcast about the M. Night Shyamalan moment where, like, you figure out who you are, and then you look back at your whole life in a new context. Like, doing that with a comic must feel so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't done that, so I can only imagine, but I think there's also a lot of cartoonists who didn't necessarily come out themselves, but ended up writing a lot more queer characters than they ever planned on writing. Just as like stories, they were like, oh, this is what's going on with this character. And, kind of
Yeah.
the characters sort of coalescing into more fully realized people the longer they went on.
I love art. My cats are growling at each other. I'm very sorry. I keep muting.
That's fine. Have you read, I forget the author's name, but it's called Us?
Us? No.
It's a graphic novel that was written by like the cis person in the relationship, but it's about this couple. It's a cis woman and a trans woman, but like when they first started seeing each other, it was before the trans partner like came out or maybe even like discovered themselves. It's been a while
Yeah.
since I read it. It's really cool because it does such a good job of like telling the trans story from the perspective of the cis
Mhm.
partner in the relationship. And it's just really
Oh, that's very
beautiful.
cool.
And
Yeah, I'd be really
the
interested.
art is really
I'd
pretty.
be
Yeah.
really interested in reading that. That sounds amazing.
Going back to the topic of One Piece from
Mhm.
earlier, one thing that I really like about One Piece, and like it has a really big like trans and queer audience
Yes.
too, but like one thing that I really like about it is that there's very few, if any at all, like conventionally attractive
Mhm.
characters in One Piece. Everybody is like super weird in one way or another. And like, I just feel like it really celebrates a lot of weirdness and not always necessarily like explicitly queerness, but I feel like there's like a lot of people like us who really identify with that.
Yeah, well, for me, and I haven't read a ton of One Piece, but the thing I really like about One Piece is how much of an homage it is to Popeye. And I think that's something that's very true in Thimble Theater, which is the comic that Popeye first appeared in. It was renamed Popeye much later. It was called Thimble Theater when it started. The characters are weird. They're not particularly attractive.
Hmm.
Popeye's got his, he originally did not have spinach powers. That came later. He originally, there's this bird called the wiffle hen, Bernice the wiffle hen, and rubbing Bernice gives you good luck. And he rubbed Bernice so many times that he survived being shot at like many, many, many times. He was like absolutely like turned into a dartboard, and he survived because he'd rubbed Bernice so many times that his luck had just like expanded. And
Poor
I need a
Bernice.
bird.
well, Bernice is adorable. Bernice is so cute. She's this little yellow hen and she's just really, really precious.
Popeye
But
lore is wild.
yeah, Popeye lore is wild, but it's just kind of like harkening back to that kind of, these characters whose appearances you can only have in comics. Like no real people can look like that.
Mhm,
There's weird powers that are things that can only happen in comics.
mhm.
And yeah, and I
Massive
think
forearms and nothing else.
Yeah, I was
massive
just thinking no one
forearms.
has
Yeah.
just big forearms.
Mm.
But yeah, I kind of fell in love with Popeye because of my job, and I think always going to be a huge Popeye fan. But Popeye is great. Popeye also calls himself Amphibious, and Amphibious means that he dresses in men's and women's clothing.
Nice.
Yeah, like it's a running thing in Popeye. He calls himself Sweepy's male sex mother. There's just like a lot of really amazing sort of gender subversion in the original Thimble Theater that I think gets lost in the cartoons. Like you don't
Yeah.
see anything like that in the Popeye cartoons. There's this one comic where he's got Sweepy and there's this mother who has her baby and they're talking about their babies. And Popeye's like, us mothers have to stick together. And the woman is like, pardon me? And Popeye is like, sometimes I forget I am a male sex. And it's so great. Like, just, this character who I
Gender
think,
goals.
yeah, like this character who is seen as such a like pillar of masculinity, right? Just does so much gender fuckery in his original incarnation,
Hmm.
which is really cool.
I
It's
need to go
making me
back
think
and
of
read old Popeye.
yeah. It's making me think of a few of my non-binary friends who are just agents of pure chaos.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
love that energy.
Yeah, no, that's one of those things that, like, people never expect it when you're like, "Oh, yeah, Popeye." You don't think of gender fluidity or, gender queerness in any way, and then you start reading these old comics, and it's like, "Oh, oh, okay, sure."
I have so many new hobbies to start, so many new collections to get going after we keep meeting all these cool people.
Yeah, that's the problem with meeting all these diverse people. You need to slow down a little. So, when did Popeye come back? Wasn't it, like, rebooted in recent years? Like
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember what year that was. 2021 or 2022? I don't remember what year. But in the
Mhm.
past few years, the person who had been writing and drawing Popeye for a very long time, a cartoonist named Hy Eisman, who was a cartoonist for many decades and worked on a lot of different comics. I'm getting kicked out of the bedroom to put the toddler to bed. So give
Mhm.
me a minute and I will be back.
Sure.
We're not really gonna kick you.
No, we're not kicking.
I love when children take things literally. It's so
Well,
funny.
they also
Yeah.
like kicking. So
They like kicking.
are you a sleepy baby snail?
Sleepy baby snail.
A sleepy baby snail.
Mhm.
Okay, hugs have been given. Um sorry about that. Um
Hugs are
Hugs are
important.
Hugs
required,
are
hugs
very
must be
important.
given.
Yes, hugs are very important. So, okay,
Mhm.
so I don't remember what we were talking about when
Me neither.
Popeye reboot.
Oh, Popeye reboot. Yeah. So, Hy Eisman retired from Popeye. He was 95 years old. He was still drawing and writing Popeye every week,
Wow.
which is amazing. And I hired Randy Milholland, who is best known as the web cartoonist behind Something Positive, which is very long running webcomic. And the reason that I hired Randy is because I'd done a project called Popeye's Cartoon Club in 2019 when Popeye turned 90 years old. Popeye's Cartoon Club was based on a something that E.C. Segar, the guy who created Popeye, had originally done in the 1930s. He would take a little square of space on the Sunday comics and he called it Popeye's Cartoon Club, and he would share drawings done by fan readers, mostly kids, and sometimes kids would send him ideas and he would draw them, but he would share them in the comic. And so I thought it would be really cool for Popeye's 90th birthday if we invited artists, cartoonists, animators, fine artists, just all kinds of people to draw their own Popeye comics and call it Popeye's Cartoon Club. And this was paid work, so everybody got paid for doing their Popeye comics. And I had reached out to another web cartoonist, Rich Stevens, about doing a Popeye comic for Popeye's Cartoon Club. And Rich was like, actually, the person you need to ask is Randy, who I didn't know. I knew his work, but I didn't know him personally. And so he connected me with Randy, and it turns out that Randy is this huge Popeye fan and knows more about Popeye than I do, which is incredible because I know a lot about Popeye. And Randy did a strip for us, but he did a bunch of strips and he couldn't decide which one to use. So I picked one to use. And then he kept drawing more Popeye strips and he was like sending them to me as like one off, like, oh, I drew another Popeye strip. And so I asked him if he would let us run the Popeye strips on Comics Kingdom, which is the official King Features comics website, just to kind of see if there was an appetite for new Popeye content. And we did, and it was very successful. And so I had gotten approved a project called Olive and Popeye, which was going to be new Popeye and olive oil cartoons. And so the idea was that Randy would draw one day a week, and another cartoonist, who the original cartoonist on it is a woman named Shadia Amin. And then the person who took over from Shadia is named Emmy Burge. And I'd started putting Olive and Popeye together as something that was going to be primarily a digital comic, but we'd seen so much appetite for new Popeye comics when we posted Randy's other Popeye comics that we were very excited to do this. And while I was in the process of getting Olive and Popeye set up, High Eisman retired. So I called Randy and I was like, "Do you want to do the Popeye Sunday comic?" And he was like, "Absolutely, yes, sign me up." And I think he's just done an incredible job with it. He knows so much about Popeye. He's brought back a bunch of characters who hadn't been seen in decades. He introduced a new character named Lyndon, who is the Sea Hag's intern. The Sea Hag is the main villain in Popeye. In the cartoons, the main villain is Bluto, but in the comics, the main villain is the Sea Hag. Bluto is more of a supporting character. He actually really only showed up once in the 1930s and then disappeared from the comics until more recently. So Bluto is like a huge part of the cartoons, but wasn't a huge part of the comics. So Sea Hag's intern, Lyndon, who is non-binary, which is really great. And he brought back like Olive Oil's family is a big part of the original comic. Before Popeye showed up, the comic really focused on Olive and her brother Castor.
Oh
So
my gosh, that's amazing.
Castor Oil, yeah. So it really focused on Olive and Castor and their family, and Castor's wife, Celinda, Cylinder Oil, it keeps going. Um, so Castor's wife, Celinda, had, like, disappeared in 1928. Shadia and Randy together brought Celinda back, and, they, but he just really brought back a lot of the spirit of the old 1930s Popeye strips that I think really, like, it's been really cool because it's really, like, ignited a lot of people's interest in Popeye because it brought a lot of new readers to Popeye, people who didn't realize that Popeye was still being published, and people who had always thought of Popeye as this, like, macho beat 'em up character, which there is a lot of that in Thimble Theater. Popeye is a boxer in Thimble Theater. Popeye beats people up all the time, but there's also this real heart to Thimble Theater that I think people didn't realize was part of Popeye's DNA. I think it was a really cool project. It's something that I'm really happy that I got to do. I am so thrilled that Rich introduced me to Randy, and that I was able to work with Randy to sort of like do this whole reboot of Popeye and, kind of bring back the original spirit of Thimble Theater to the Popeye comic strip.
I did not know Popeye contains multitudes, and I love it.
Popeye's great. Popeye's the best.
I mostly remember the cartoon and then the Robin Williams movie.
Yeah, the Robin Williams movie is good. The Robin Williams movie uses a bunch of stuff from the original comics. I think, like, it's a little, like, people who've only seen the cartoons watch it and are like, "What the hell is this?" Because it does veer more into the comic strips than the cartoons do, but it's a solid movie. It's real cute.
I need to revisit that movie. I've been thinking about that recently.
Yeah, I haven't watched it since just after Robin Williams passed, and I spent
Mm.
like a week just watching every Robin
Oh,
Williams movie
wow.
that I'd watched, and cried a lot.
Yeah.
It was rough. Thank you for being Popeye Robin Williams, wherever you are. Hopefully,
Mm,
if there is a heaven up there,
Oh.
all the work he did employing the houseless on
yes.
every movie he ever went on. So cool.
Yeah.
Weird tangent from Ben. Welcome to ADHD.
Hey, no, it's all good.
Where are we going? I love the Popeye talk, but
We're normal. I
we're normally
mean,
more organized.
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it's us, but yeah. I blame the government.
Yeah, the government is up to some bad things. Shenanigans derogatory.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for our friends? By friends, I mean, I'm going to send this to our specific friend who's a comic book writer. But do you have any advice for like a budding comic book author or artist?
I primarily worked in comic strips, which is a very different
Yeah.
it's basically a different industry from comic books.
Hmm.
So the advice that I would have is gonna be more useful to somebody who's looking to create comic strips. But I think in general, one of the things that helps regardless of the format of comics that you're creating, is just doing it. Getting your work out there. I think, like, for me, as somebody who was in a hiring position, who, loved to find people online and hire them, I think, I would hire people based on, like, the work that they posted on social media or the work that they had on their personal website. And I hired a bunch of people to do their first professional work, and I think a lot of editors will do that if they see that someone is willing and able to produce good comic work basically on their own steam. They're going to be more willing to, like, take a risk on a new person, because if somebody is willing to do all of that on their own for nothing, and they're motivated to do that on their own without an editor, like, poking them and being like, "Your deadline, you've got a deadline." You imagine what kind of work they're gonna be doing when they get paid and they have someone managing their time for them.
Yeah.
So, I think, like, just getting your work out there is, like, the most important thing you can do as a cartoonist. If you are fortunate enough to live in a city that has an indie comics fest, like, not New York Comic Con, not San Diego Comic Con, but like Mocha Fest or SPX or TCAF. There are ones all over the country. There's CXC, there's Cake. I could just keep naming them. If you have the opportunity to get a table at one of those indie comic shows, it's a great way to not only get your work out to an audience, but also meet other people who are creating indie comics. And the indie comics community is so great. There is a lot of communal support for each other and people cheering on people's successes. It's just a really warm and inviting community. And I highly, highly recommend tapping into that if you're in an area where you have the opportunity to do that.
There's so many amazing queer artists and writers and creators too. Like, I just like want everybody to see all of their work.
Yeah. If
Mhm.
if if you are a queer comic creator and can get a table at FlameCon and can afford to go to New York City to table at FlameCon, 100% recommend it. FlameCon is such an accepting and inclusive environment and so supportive of each other. And it's just so great to be in a place with all of these creative queer people all doing their own thing. I could just go on about FlameCon forever. It's really great. So that's also something that, like, if you have the resources to be able to go to FlameCon as a queer creator, I would always recommend it.
I wanna start BratCon and just get a whole bunch of nerds with different interests together and see what we can make with our powers combined like the X-Men.
I
Yes.
think you just want to have a party with our friends.
Oh, that's BratCon.
Recon. It's so formal now.
Mhm.
Well, we're gonna link to all of your socials in the show notes and on our Discord and everything. Is there anything else that you want to like plug or anything that you want to boost while you're on with us?
I'm teaberryblue.com on Bluesky. I am not really on any other social media anymore.
Same.
I have a Tumblr, but I don't really use it. Definitely tell folks to check out flamecon.org, because FlameCon is awesome, and I always want to, like, expand people's knowledge of it. And even if you can't go to FlameCon, if it can be like an inspiration for you to get more queer content at your local comic convention, that's always a really great thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
I love the idea of FlameCon. I'm gonna be digging into this and,
Yeah, maybe we'll go
dreaming.
next time.
Yeah, I would love to go. Just meet a whole bunch of cool, um, more gay people to live in my phone, because that's what I call my friends that I only talk to online, is the
Hey,
gay people who live in my phone.
good.
Right. Well, thanks so much again for being on with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. It
Hmm.
was really fun. It was so nice talking with you, and I feel like I have two new friends.
Yay!
That's
Love
what I wanna
that.
hear because you are one of the coolest
Mhm.
people. Everyone we talk to, everyone is so cool, and I want to keep you all and hug you all in a
Aw.
big group hug. So
Mhm.
thank you for saying that. You're amazing and so generous with how much you've helped other people, getting into their careers and, like, helping people achieve their dreams, and I'm just very emotional today.
Aw,
Me
thank you
too.
so much. I feel like that's what we're all here for is to, like, support each other and advocate for each other, and if
Mhm.
I can, find ways of helping cartoonists get their comics out there in front of people, like, that's the coolest thing in the world.
It's beautiful.
So beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the conversation. Thanks for the wonderful vibes that I very much needed today. I feel like so much more. Like I feel enriched right now. So I
Yeah, I'm gonna sleep
appreciate
so
the
much
whole.
better tonight than I would have if we hadn't done this.
Oh,
Mhm.
good. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. And will you bully Jay for us into being on the podcast sometime?
I will extend the invitation to him.
You can call it an invitation. That's fine
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, for sure. If you can zap out any images of the toddler
Yeah.
or there were a couple times that we said their name.
We will protect them.
Thank you.
It is an honor
Thank
that we
you
got
very
to meet
much.
them. So lovely.
Yeah, it was really fun to have them on.
Mm, so emotional.
Yeah, I'm crying a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh,
All right. Well, Ben, do you want to lead us out?
Thank you so much for listening to Ben and Robin Are Trans, also known as the Brat Pod, with special
Okay.
guest T. I am Ben and I'm trans.
I am Robin and I'm trans.
Solidarity forever.
Yes. We'll see y'all next time.
Someday I'm gonna write a script for an ad for Manscaped, and they're gonna give me money to talk about my butt
Yeah.
hair.
Hey, Manscaped, escape this man.
Please help. I have so much butt hair. It's everywhere.
Yeah. This ad brought to you by us
Butt
wanting to
hair.
be brought to you by manscaped.com. This man right here is on T. He has so much butt hair right now. And like somebody needs to support him to spend money on all this butt hair removal
Hmm.
product.
And someday I'll
Manscaped.com
need
could do
facial
that.
hair removal on a more regular basis.
Yeah.
But it's already getting like textury and it's kind of fun.
Ooh, face texture.
Mhm.